right, so I think we're going to wrap up on so I think actually a couple of really interesting topics. We'll get to we always try to have a story or two that's really focused on the brass tacks of CIO. But before we get there, I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about this interesting story that you found about AI researchers from, was it Zurich, Switzerland? Yeah, the
Zurich
University
and
of
I
Zurich
think Chicago, maybe. Yeah.
and University of Chicago, is that what it was? But they were doing research, unannounced research, using a
Oh,
Reddit
that one. Okay.
subreddit. Yeah, sorry. Um, and it was fascinating, I think, so obviously we were focused on enterprise tech, and on the surface, um, this isn't, right? This was, I mean, it was general research about changing behaviors or changing opinions, right? And so the idea was the subreddit that is, I guess, dedicated to people sort of putting out their position and wanting to be challenged.
Hmm.
And these researchers using AI to put in responses and using basically how well those responses were received to as a barometer of whether or not AI is better than people at persuading people. Now, a little sidebar: we've seen previous research that wasn't done the same way, that actually showed that AI was actually better at persuading people in many cases. So this was sort of a way of what this researchers hoped as a way of testing into the wild. The challenge, of course, is that they didn't tell anybody. And of course, had they told anybody, then it wouldn't have been in the wild. It would have been a controlled experiment. So it's like, I sort of get why they wanted to approach it this way. But of course, Reddit, the users, the internet, all sort of got up in arms over
Hmm.
what they viewed as an ethical breach here, that effectively AI was sitting here and engaging on the subreddit without their knowledge and awareness. And I have my opinion on it, but before I kind of weigh in, I'm curious if I missed any context you think is important and what your take on this was.
So I understand that technically, from an ethical perspective, these University of Zurich researchers crossed the line in experimenting on humans and potentially manipulating them. But I also feel like social media for the past 10 to 15 years has been very AI driven, anyways. And we should all assume that strangers on the internet who haven't proven themselves could very well be either trolling us with intentionally bad takes or potentially be AI. Like, this is not a new problem. And as far as the actors go, like being manipulated by a researcher is probably not even the worst social media manipulation that I will face today.
Well, so I have I have two sort of takeaways, and then I want to bring this back to why this is, I feel like, relevant for an enterprise IT leader to think about. But I'm a fairly big Redditor. I think it's what we're called, right? I'm probably on Reddit every single day and reading through subreddits. I don't contribute a whole lot, but I'm more of a lurker, I guess. Um, but to your point, at the end of the day, it's a social media thing, and one of the common things is you'll see people in posts where they're going, "Ah, this is clearly a bot," right? It's like there are bots all over Reddit already. So the only thing that made this really different is that it was organized by a ostensibly, legitimate organization in terms of this. It was part of this research. Um, and so, on the one hand, I sort of get it, but on the other hand, it's like it's flipping social media. It's like, what do you? And guess what? If this AI changed your mind, then I guess you made a good argument because you changed your mind, and so it sort of proved the point. So as we've seen a lot with the whole AI space, I found this sort of a lot of to do of nothing. However, the one thing, and this goes back to where I found this relevant from a CIO perspective, I think one of the challenges that we have of applying this technology in an
Mhm.
enterprise context is that we have a lot of risk. We have a lot at stake. And trying to ferret out what works, what doesn't, how it works, why it works, um, is going to be really, really challenging. And it's one of those, and I always forget the name of this paradox, but once somebody understands that it's AI,
Mhm.
then the tenor changes, right? And so it's one of the battles, one of the things that I feel is I don't know if you've noticed this, that I think is developing, in that increasingly I'm seeing what are clearly AI bots, or at least clearly to me, AI bots, not self-identifying as AI. And I've actually had it a couple of times where I'm like interacting and then I like, oh, I didn't realize you're AI. I need to talk to somebody, right? And I think this is going to be an ongoing challenge for CIOs and enterprises in general as to, do we in fact owe the people we're interacting with an explanation or a definition that they're interacting with an AI or not? There's all this talk about AI agents, and we'll talk a little bit more about the hype, but of taking on human personas, and do we owe that? And I think it's a really interesting question that's going to become more and more difficult to answer over time as the capabilities increase, as we deploy them more consistently. And so it was just, to me, it was just a bit of a thought experiment. And I was quite fascinated by the very visceral reaction on this group. So
Yeah, but I think more than just as a thought experiment, when I see press releases by Zendesk or NICE or Five9, anybody involved in customer experience or help desk or contact center, this is exactly the type of stuff they're talking about, being able to automate tier one interactions on the help desk, being able to answer basic frequently asked questions, and being able to do it with a friendly voice in real time and with very questionable methods of identifying who is actually providing that answer. It very much varies from vendor to vendor. So I think that is definitely something we're going to run into. I would say that from a scientific perspective, not necessarily from my enterprise business perspective, I actually think it is important to have some sort of measure of how much more persuasive AI is than an average person, because we know that AI, without tweaking, tends to be sociopathically confident. Like that's one of the things we noticed about GPT when it started becoming popular, that it might give you the wrong answer, but it was sure very confident about giving you that wrong answer, 100% no doubt. And then people would be surprised when it would, it would tell you, oh, the sky is purple. And then you would write back, is the sky really purple? I thought it was blue. And it says, oh, you're right. Yes, it is absolutely blue. It's like, whatever it says, it is 100% committed. And that commitment leads to persuasiveness.
yeah, no, I think from a purely ethical standpoint, what they would have been well
Yeah.
served to do is find a willing subreddit or to create their own, where they acknowledge that, hey, the answers may be AI, may not be, and that way. And I think the other thing that got them into trouble, frankly, was that it wasn't just like they unleashed a bot here and let it sort of do its thing. The researchers themselves were attempting to infer things like race and gender from posts, and sort of then seeding the AI with that, and that was now starting to get a little dicey. So I mean, there are definitely some issues with it, but I do think it's a larger issue that you're going to have to address and understand the implications, and understand the reaction that you may get if you're not careful in how you deploy it.